Okay, so I'm going to continue with chapter 3, which is the global trade environment. So we're going to see in general how basically the global markets have been regulated and what are the different organizations and opportunities there that have further pushed globalization. So in general, back in 1947, that was the first time the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades was published, the so-called GATT. So what they did then is this organization was supposed to handle trade disputes between countries. The problem was it lacked enforcement power. So this means that they would talk, but then nobody has the power to make a country do something. So that meant that disputes could last for years. And that was the reason, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why in 1995, GATT was removed and it was replaced by the World Trade Organization, which remains today to be the main body regulating the field of international trade. So today we have 160 members of the world, so countries which are members of the World Trade Organization. It is based in Geneva, and it serves as a dispute mediator. So basically, when countries have problems with each other, they can take it to the dispute settlement body. There's a 60-day negotiation period, which then is could be advanced. So if no resolution is achieved, then it's advanced to a three-member panel for resolution. And if even then there's no agreement reached, it can be advanced to the appellate body. If a country, so basically if there's a decision, let's say against some country, and this country is not willing to follow that, then the World Trade Organization has enforcement power and can impose sanctions on that country. One of the ways in which countries basically improve their position as a member of global trade is by conducting or signing up preferential trade agreements. For example, the World Trade Organization knows now of 300 such preferential trade agreements. So the preferential trade agreements give partners special treatment, and also they may discriminate against others. Now, when we talk about agreements between countries, we have 4 different main types or layers of relationships. So the first layer is the foreign trade agreement. The second layer is the customs unions. Then we have common market, and finally economic union. So we're going to talk now in more detail. But basically, the further we go up this pyramid, the more integrated the markets are, the less barriers we have, not just for trade of goods and services, but also movement of capital, workforce, and technology and intellectual property rights. So the free trade area is the most simple out of all this. It's basically an agreement between 2 or more countries to abolish trade barriers. So removal of things like tariffs or other administrative barriers which reduce or make impossible trade. What's important here is that countries which signed the free trade agreement, they continue to run, to have independent trade policies with third country. So, for example, one of the biggest, I think the biggest actually free trade area is and the oldest is NAFTA. So this is the North American Free Trade Agreement between Canada, Mexico, and United States. And so what that means is that, for example, Mexico and United States can have different trade tariffs with China, but they have no tariffs between Mexico and United States. The next form of union is the customs union. So basically, this is an evolution of the free trade area. They have all the features of a free trade area, but now also they have common external barriers. So if NAFTA, it's not the case, but if NAFTA was also a customs union, then in my example, Mexico and the United States will have the same trading conditions with China, for example. So examples of such unions, the European Union and Turkey, the Andean community, Mercosur, CARICOM, and so on. The next level of integration is a common market. So again, here we have all the elements of a free trade area, we have all the elements of a customs union, but now also we add free movements of factors of production, such as labor, capital, and information. So not only can we trade without limitations, but people can freely go and work in other countries under the same conditions as local people. Same with capital. The next and most comprehensive possibility is the economic union. So the economic union, again, has all the elements of, absolutely all elements of the previous ones we mentioned, but now it also coordinates and harmonizes economic and social policy. Now, the reason this is important is because we can say, like in the previous case of a common market, we are saying we're allowing, for example, free movements of people. But if we don't coordinate our labor legislation, it's very difficult, for example, for people to move to another country, and then, for example, what happens to their pensions? So economic union is the next level of development where we have full integration, really making possible easy movement of people and capital. So not just on theory, but in reality, our legislation is so harmonized. Harmonized means made equal or similar, so that this free movement of goods, services, people, capital, and information is really possible. The full evolution of an economic union we have only in the European Union, where we have like a creation of a unified central bank, use of a single currency, a lot of common legislation and common policy on issues such as agriculture, social policy, transport, competition, mergers, and taxation, and many others. So in order to achieve this requires extensive political unity and kind of a central government. So we have huge now bodies which are governing and making all this possible. Again, this is kind of the first experiment, I would say, is the European Union. What we know that other countries, other unions are now looking to that as kind of the future of their agreements as well. For example, this example here is giving you an idea of how much such trade agreements are important. For example, here you see the top export and import partners of the United States are actually Canada and Mexico, right? China, of course, because of its importance for global economies, but immediately next to it, Canada and Mexico. There are a number of unions, but I'm not going to go into a lot of details today, but there are a number of unions that have different levels of integration. So for example, in Latin America, we have SICA, Andean Community, Mercosur, CARICOM. They include different countries and different levels of integration. North America, we have NAFTA. So I already mentioned about it. This is the oldest foreign trade agreement. In Central American integration, in Central America, we have the so-called Central American integration system. So they have, it started as a foreign trade agreement again, but it's moving to a common market. They have common external tariffs from between 0 and 15%. Okay, so these are the countries. So you see it's Guatemala, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama, Nicaragua, and Honduras. So some of the advantages here are that paperwork is reduced. There's a reduced risk, meaning more direct investment. So basically, each of these agreements is putting some priorities, like what is important for the economic development of these countries. And based on that, we're trying to reach agreements that would benefit basically the economic development of the region. We also have the Andean community. So we have here Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. We already, I mean, this has been functioning for more than 50 years now. So here in this case, we have a customs union with common external tariffs and free movement of, so they've abolished foreign exchange, financial and fiscal incentives are in place, and so on. We also have the common market of the South. So this is countries like Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Venezuela. So they have both core members as well as associate members. There's some differences in their rights and obligations. They're also a customs union and the #1 trading partner of the European Union. These are the countries. We also have the CARICOM. So they were moving towards, so there was an idea about an economic union, but back in 1998, they abolished that idea. And they decided that a single currency in their case would not be beneficial. In the Asian Pacific, so I think this is one of the very important cases now, is the ASEAN, so-called ASEAN countries, which is the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations. You're probably familiar with that. So, for example, yeah, so there's also ASEAN +6, which includes, in addition to the original countries, 6 more countries. So ASEAN is one of the really, together with the European Union and NAFTA, probably the most important union in the world now, as far as power, economic power, and opportunities. specifically here we're singling out Singapore because it's one of the countries in this union. And despite being a relatively small country, it's the second largest container port, which means that a lot of the trade goes from there for the ASEAN countries. And another reason why it's kind of a country to know of is because we have the highest standard of living in the region behind Japan. Okay, so we have also the European Union. As I said, this is the most integrated union we have. So the objective is to completely harmonize national laws and regulations so that goods, services, people, and money could flow freely across national boundaries. In 1991, the Maastricht Treaty sets the stage also for transition to an economic union with a central bank and a single currency. Today we have 27 countries because the UK left, the United Kingdom, with so it's a force to be reckoned because, I mean, the GNI, the gross national income, is $15 trillion. So basically there are no customs or national borders between most of the countries. There are certain details still within the European Union. We have countries at different level of integration, but mostly moving towards full integration. In the Middle East, we also have a number of unions. Primarily, here we have Arab, many Persian, and some Jewish countries. So you see here a very wide variety of also levels of development, I would say, in this region, and a very big dependence on world oil. So the key regional organization here is the Gulf Cooperation Council. It was established in 1981 by 6 countries, and they have 45 of world's oil, which obviously is where the biggest importance for the world of this region. What's important for this region is that they realize the consequences of having too big of a dependence on oil. So they are doing a great job in diversifying, especially I think the United Arab Emirates, and especially what's happening in Dubai, is seeing really big diversification of the economy and not any more full dependency on oil, but development of a lot of other industries. We're going to have a case we're going to briefly discuss about Dubai, so we're going to talk more about it. Africa also, a lot of things are happening. So there's a number of unions there and regional agreements. There's but still Africa is kind of divided. Part of it is much more developed than another part. That's why we have more regional agreements. And yeah, this is the last slide I have from this section. So now, do you have questions on this? No? Okay, so I'm gonna show the case. So I'm gonna share my screen again. Did you maybe read this case? So it's called, Can Global Trade Talks Survive in an Era of Populism and Protectionism? Okay, so maybe you didn't. As I said, in the future, it would be much more useful for you if you read it in advance, and then we can discuss it. Just 1 second. Okay, so there are a couple of things we're talking about here. One is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the relationships also between, so the relationship between America and some of the Asian countries, as well as the relationships between the United States and the European Union. Specifically, the United States and the European Union have the world's largest trading relationships, with trade amounting to 1 trillion annually. However, there has been some declines in the last years because we've seen growing, I apologize. Okay. So there is the decline is mainly a result of the increased trade relations between United States and China and other Asian countries. So in an effort to improve the U.S. The economic relationships between the United States and the European Union, there was a desire to sign a transformative 21st century agreement. However, things did not go exactly as planned, and there were 2 major events that happened that kind of prevented the initial plans. One was the exit of one was Brexit, the exit of United Kingdom from the European Union. So this was a huge shock because this was the first time a country would exit the Union. And it kind of put a stop to a lot of things until we see how things are going to work out. And then the second, probably kind of almost simultaneously what happened, another shock. So basically Brexit was a big shock, and then the other shock was the election of Donald Trump as a president. I'm saying a shock in this case because he actually announced himself to be against further trade liberalization, and he started actually bringing back certain protectionist measures, which were previously removed from his predecessor. So he announced that he wants to, he actually won. One of the reasons he won is because he was talking a lot about the consequences of globalization on the industries in the United States and on the life is basically of ordinary Americans, many of whom, for example, people who are working in the car industry, a lot of people lost their jobs. So a lot of industries were like really disrupted, really even closed completely as a result of what was happening in China and the movement of, and in general Asia, the movement of a lot of factories outside of the United States. So part of his program by coming into power was actually to bring back factory jobs to America. And he was planning to introduce back some of the tariffs, which was met with a lot of different opinions. So according to some, for example, we're giving here an example of an executive at General Electric, explained that this could be the biggest, most, no, sorry, this is something else. So this quote of General Electric is with regard to the potential of having a renewed agreement between the United States and America. So it was more in support of the importance of that. So the problem is, and this case gives some of the difficulties in establishing relations between countries. So, for example, the European businesses. So there is this desire that both Europe and America remove barriers, but they also have very big disagreements. So, for example, Europe has blocked the imports of genetically modified agricultural products, such as corn and soy. Another problem was in the rest of agriculture. So in general, I mean, overall, I guess we can summarize it that European Union restricts the import of most genetically modified crops, but there are also issues with subsidized agriculture in the United States, which makes it's again considered a trade barrier because it puts companies at different conditions. If one is subsidized, that obviously they can sell products much cheaper. Another big concern was product labeling. So, for example, America sells the so-called puts Parmesan on their labeling of produced in the US cheese, but at the same time in the European Union, Parmesan is a specifically cheese coming only from the Parmigiano Reggiano in Italy, a specific region in Italy, and nobody else has the right to put that on their products. But United States is used to, I mean, they have used that for years. So it's an example of a barrier that it's not so easy to be overcome. So they're saying, for example, because of EU regulations, Kraft, which is a big company, cannot sell its cheese to Europe. Another question has been in general, matter of culture. So, for example, in some countries in Europe, there are specific regulations for amount of American movies, for example, in France, versus local movies. I mean, we can continue with the examples, but it just shows that despite that there are a lot of advantages in improving and removing trade barriers, there is also a lot of difficulty. So the main question here in this case is, can really global trade talks survive in what we call an era of populism and protectionism? So that's a big question. Is this just populism? Did Trump really just win elections? Or is there a trend towards a need to protect more local economies from globalization? So there's no easy answer to this, but this is the main question here. And the question is, can countries today really afford not to be part of global agreements, and can we really afford not to collaborate with other markets? Can they actually survive like that? Or have we reached such level of economic integration that we actually have to accept the fact that the world is one global market, and we better try to benefit from it rather than try to protect ourselves from it? So I don't know, do you have an opinion in terms of, should we see more globalization? Should we even more integrate countries? Or do you feel in some cases we need more protectionist measures. In other words, more specific ways in which we support and prevent local, so basically support local industries from global competitors. What do you think? Okay, so I don't think it's difficult if you haven't read the case. They're giving also here a good example of let me see what was the case. Yeah, for example, the New Balance Athletics, the company is still one of the companies that produces athletic shoes in the United States. So they produce 7 million pairs per year. And they are sourcing some of their products from abroad, but nevertheless, they're producing still in the United States. So the head of public affairs at New Balance explains that from a purely financial point of view, it is more profitable to source shoes in low-wage countries. However, management at New Balance believe that having some of its product made in America is important to the company's brand story. So basically, they think a competitive advantage out of continuing doing it like that. But the problem is, I mean, they're probably more expensive. So the question is here, one of the question is, should United States drop tariffs on footwear, even if it means that factories like New Balance will have to close and people would have to lose their jobs, which is the case which has happened. A lot of factories have been closed in the United States. So it's not an easy question. So do we support just global trade, or do we need to support, so do we support global trade and globalization because of its obvious benefit, or without thinking of local production, like this example, or should we create more conditions to protect such industries and ensure that this number, because it's not just about the branding. I mean, this company obviously benefits from this Made in America brand, but it's also about a lot of jobs of local people. Do you have any opinions on that? Okay. So I welcome you to read all the cases we discussed briefly here. I mean, we cannot go into a lot of details during class, but I welcome you to really read them and think about the questions they're asking. Because it's this is what's really going to elevate your level of learning, the ability to really think in context, not just theoretically answer questions, but the ability to really understand real life examples. Okay, so with that, we're gonna finish this section, and we're gonna go for 5-minute break now.